Hey, everybody. Good afternoon. This is the Helping Friendly podcast. It's Monday, January 20th. We are here to bring you conversation about a fish show, I think. This is today's a historic day. It's the 60th inauguration in U.S. history. First one was in 1793. Brian, can you run down the previous 59 and just tell us like one fact about each of the last 59 real quick before we get going?
You probably could.
But we're not going to talk about that today, are we? We're not.
Well, I just
Not on the
want to.
agenda.
I think that we should talk a little bit about the Garfield inauguration and all the entire Garfield presidency and what that led to today. I mean, that was the second president to be assassinated. It was a very contentious time in American history. People were looking for significant change. There was a lot of pushback from the South in opposition to what was happening as the Union had taken over after the Civil War. There was a lot of cries that the South was being persecuted and that they were being stamped down. And so they revolted. They wanted significant change. And Garfield came in and said, I'm just going to toe the line right down the middle, and look where it led him. So, it's an interesting, America evolves and changes and ebbs and flows, and we will see where we go here.
It's a good question. One of our faithful viewers on YouTube. Do fish prices go down after today or just eggs? I bought eggs. I went to the grocery store with my kids the other day specifically to buy eggs. And I think got like a 24 thing of eggs and it was $12. I was really surprised.
Yeah. We have
very expensive.
A new law passed in Colorado or went into effect that all eggs have to be cage free now. So eggs a dozen eggs are like $10 right now.
Wow.
So we told the kids no more breakfast burritos, no more eggs in ramen, no more. We're not baking anything anymore. Like we're literally just holding on to the 12 eggs we have. And that's it.
You just need chickens, dude.
I need to get chickens, but they destroyed my backyard. Yeah, I used to have them.
Really? Well, and they destroyed it? They just
that was sad. our COVID pet was 8 chickens, and
I want chickens so bad.
They were great.
What about
the eggs were
dogs?
Great. They're very well. We got our dogs after COVID, but
I guess it depends how you look at it.
The chicken. The chickens were like August 2020. We were like, you know what we should do? Put chickens in the backyard.
Yeah,
and it was fun. Got a lot of eggs. Sold some eggs. Cleaned up a lot of chicken coops, and then we redid our backyard and said the chickens are just going to destroy it, so we can't.
They gotta go.
All right. So after that lesson, we'll move along and we'll talk about. I do want to say that this week there are 3 reprise shows coming up. The 23rd, which is Thursday, in Pembroke, Massachusetts. I'll be there. Hope to see some of you there on the 24th, Friday at Park City in Bridgeport. And then on the 25th in Newmarket, New Hampshire at the Stone Church. It's going to be fun. Then there's 4 shows coming up. Actually, no, sorry. 5 shows coming up. One at the end of February in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. And then Worcester, Mass., Saratoga Springs, New York, and New Hope. So we got there's a lot going on. Yeah. 8 shows in the next month and a half, which is great.
And I'll be there on Friday.
Yep. It's true. So come hang out with us.
Gonna be there.
It's true.
Come hang out with us. You can
RJ,
see Meg.
Are you going to be there?
Yeah, I'll be there. Yep, I'll be there.
Good.
Nobody cares if I'm going to be there or not, Megan. This is
not true.
Very 2017. It's like, they're like, oh yeah, of course RJ's going to be there. Talk to him before.
I see how you're mobbed at these shows. Don't act humble, please.
Mobbed.
Seeing a show with RJ is literally one of life's greatest joys. I don't understand this. When nobody cares that he's there. He's got the greatest vibe. Somehow everything works out, even though he gets you into the concert like 60 seconds before the band comes on stage.
Yeah, but then my soul will play and it's totally fine. So he'll be like, see, I knew this was going to happen.
Yep.
And he knows the songs that you want to hear and also the songs you don't want to hear, so that he can make fun of you and share in your joy. And randomly he'll put his arm around you and be like, man, I just love you. And it just takes, a standard version of Funky Bitch to new heights.
Yeah. Hey, man. Just saying. It's a fun experience going to concerts. All right. What else we got? What else you got to say, guys?
Oh, we have another episode coming out next Monday, Library Card.
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
We do.
Yeah, we're talking about Northwoods. by Daniel Mason. And there's been a few people that I know that have gotten into the podcast and have read the book and are very excited for this conversation. So we're starting to get people reading with us, which is really exciting. And the whole point of the show.
Brian, can we digress for a minute and just talk about this 3 days of football we have going on? We're on day 3. There's only one football game today, but the past 2 days of football have been incredible. What a great diversion from regular life. What was the highlight of your weekend sports watching?
Well, I'll just say I was in the wilderness with football for about a decade there. It was so violent and so like militaristic, and I didn't really like the culture. And then 3 years ago, this last weekend, I got COVID, and I was in this very room watching movies, watching TV, and I turned on the divisional round of the NFL playoffs and saw like 3 classic games. And I was like, you know what? I'm back. Like it's so much fun to watch. Like this is my favorite weekend of football of the year. 4 really great games. I really liked the Bills Ravens game last night. Super intense. I dig Josh Allen. I dig everyone up in Buffalo. I relate to those people as a Chicago Cubs fan. Like that kind of sadness. There's like a very specific type of fan who likes that kind of sadness and that kind of torture. I am one of those people. And so I relate with those folks and I'm hoping the Bills win the Super Bowl this year. Great classic game in the snow. The Philly Rams game was really wild, and sad to see Detroit lose the way that they did. Were you a Lions fan growing up? I know you were a Tigers fan.
Yeah. You know, in the amount of time that we had for to be an NFL fan, which in the Midwest is not a lot because we got a lot of college football to care about.
It's true.
You know. But yeah, well, of course, like because when I was growing up, Barry Sanders was a god,
peak.
you know. So yes, but yeah, it's sad. I have a bunch of friends who are Lions fans. It's a sad way to go out for them. And who knows? This Jayden Daniels is the real deal. So
yeah, there's only one team that picked a quarterback in front of Jayden Daniels. Do you know who that team is?
Yeah, I do.
Good thing I swore them off in 2012. But no, it was a fun weekend. Meg, I know you watched some football. You had a very important opinion that all football games should be played in the snow, which is kind of controversial around like football purists versus.
Oh, come on. It's so romantic that way. It's so romantic.
I'm on the
that
page
way.
with you. I'm on the
Yeah,
same
I mean,
page with
listen,
you.
I don't watch football, but my husband put it on last night. My daughter was entertaining friends upstairs, so we came down to eat and put on that Bills Ravens game. And the snow, it looked so magical. And that's exactly like I grew up in Michigan. That's how football games should be played. And my friend is a rabid Bills fan. And he was telling me stories when I saw him recently about how at that field, sometimes they don't have time to shovel all the snow and it compacts into ice. And sometimes you are standing on ice for the entire game. And that it just takes a lot. And he brings his kids up there and they had great stories about it too. So there's something kind of great about suffering for sports like that. I'm into it.
Suffering for sports, that's it.
Yeah. Can we just go back to the suffering just real quick? Because
sure.
I actually think out of all the first round quarterbacks after the first year, I think I would take any of them over Caleb Williams.
I don't think you're wrong.
Jayden Daniels, Drake May, Penix, McCarthy. I mean, McCarthy didn't even play, but still, and then Nix. What do you think?
I think a lot of them were drafted into better situations than Caleb Williams.
Yeah.
The Bears are in a very unique situation, similar to the Chicago Bulls, where they're owned by people that don't realize they live in the 3rd largest media market. And so they own their team and they spend money as though it's Milwaukee and not Chicago. And it is endlessly frustrating. And until these octogenarian morons sell the teams that are worth like $4 or $5 billion, if you don't want to spend money to actually build winning teams in a giant media market, sell it. It's worth like $5 billion. It's like 6,000% more than you bought the team for. Like, what are we doing here? You don't want to spend the money? Come on. So I think Caleb came into an absolutely a boy who was his coach and an offensive line that is literally just like, hey, let's open the gates and let's see what happens. So with that, like you're not going to see much success from a quarterback. They were in a lot of games. Caleb's got a great arm. He's got great legs. He can get out of the pocket, but he's just doomed if he has to come back to this, you know?
That is good analysis. Caleb Williams, of course, went to high school in DC at Gonzaga, and now we have the Washington Commanders with another number 1 draft pick coming to Philadelphia next week on Sunday. It's gonna be 2 30-degree games, Meg. I don't know if there's gonna be snow, but both games are
I
gonna
hope
be
so.
like 30 degrees. So
Perfect. I'm still
It's fun.
amazed that they play in short sleeves, even in that weather. Those guys are so tough. It's like
So
10
tough.
degrees. So tough.
It's-
I mean,
it's
because
just-
football is a lot of just standing around. Like when I was a cheerleader in Michigan and we had to cheer for football games, we had to wear pants. It sucked. And it was cold. And if you were just standing there, like basketball was fun to cheer for because you'd be running around there was things happening. With football, half the time you're just standing there, like waiting for stuff to happen.
man.
Cold.
Do you know what wasn't standing around?
What?
Fish on January 3rd, 2015. They came out and they refused to stand around. They played like
Nope.
they were playing in the Miami Heat arena and
Yeah.
not in the Orange Bowl. And like it was LeBron and Wade and Bosch and Miller and Spo on the sidelines, like with his arms going everywhere, calling everything out. I mean, some sick stuff happened on January 3rd, 2015. You guys know what I'm talking about?
I do. But before we get there, can we play a voicemail from one of our listeners?
Oh,
Please.
yes, please.
Now that we've spent, we didn't really even divert for that long. All right, let's go.
Felt long.
Hey
Just
guys,
kidding.
and just wanted to say, love the show. I've been listening for a couple years. It's a great way. It's usually for me a Friday or Saturday night just to kind of relax into the weekend. And just really love, the friendship you guys clearly have, the easiness together, and just really you could tell there's an enjoyment. So thank you for that. I wanted to comment on the top 25. I loved it. It actually inspired me to do a live fish relief winter 94 tour, which has been awesome. So I'm doing, Boone, Spartanburg. I'm actually on the virtual I-95 up to Glen Falls as we speak. But the piece that is most intriguing to me is I loved RJ's reflection on 2003. I feel definitely it's 1 or 2. That whole year is just incredible. So I'm definitely here for you, Matt. And Brian, I know, both love that year. In my mind, like I said, it could be number 1. I mean, you got that Camden twist is amazing, but that Sense and Subtle Sounds, which I probably listen to at least once a week, is kind of a perfect encapsulation of that year. It's, that dark, that mean, that angry, emotional. I love Trey's screamer tone. I think the big argument for it is just how exploratory that year is. I think this year more than any others really deeply explores jamming. And, that's the heart of this band, as we know. It's got kind of this free and searching and kind of seeking nature to it that I love. And then the other thing, too, which I'm sure you guys have picked up on, is I feel this is one of the few years where Gordon kind of locks into a lot of grooves on jams. That Charlotte Bathtub, Miami Piper, which is insane. There's a really good Sneak and Sally from Noblesville. I love the Inglewood Bathtub. There's so many good jams at Nassau, which I was actually at that show. I've probably been to about 40 shows, and not because of drugs, but I honestly can remember like 4 or 5 moments for some reason. But I vividly remember that tweezer, looking over at my brother's friend and just being amazed. And still to this day, I don't remember if my first show was December of '95, shockingly, or I know I went to Clifford Ball. So anyway, but I thought I'd share. I love the show. Can't wait for next episodes, and love that the 2003 sort of appreciation is building and growing. So thanks again, guys. Really love it. Bye-bye.
It's amazing that after 20 years of slander, we 2 weeks in a row get the same praise for 2003 Fish. Word for word recorded it's amazing. The same caller called in back-to-back weeks and said, I just got to share with you how much I love 2003. So I'm here for it. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, for sure. Also another chance to glaze RJ, as my kids tell me, build you up, praise you online. We did it.
Yeah, that was definitely the point. Yes. Thank you, caller. Thank you for, again, sharing that with us. Hey,
is that just psyching you up for tonight's game?
Nope. No, it's just maybe the wrong folder. But we appreciate that guy quite a lot. Okay, now here's a real one. A real new one.
Great.
You ready for the
thoughts.
real shit? The real new shit?
We'll see.
Maybe not.
Hey guys, Matty P here. Just wanted to say really appreciate what you guys do, and I love the analysis and the hard work that you all do so that people like me don't have to do it. Really look forward to the shows every week, and I love the input and the chemistry you guys have. It's great. I've always thought that the studio albums were interesting little benchmarks, and I was wondering if you guys, what your thoughts were on the studio albums as individual pieces and little sort of stepping stones along the way, and would it be fun to do an in-depth analysis on the studio albums and sort of where the band were at that time, any guest players they may have had, equipment they were using at that time, etc. Thank you. Really appreciate the great work you guys do. Bye.
So Matt and I did a series where we went through at least the first 7 albums, I think.
I think we
in
even did one when
20
I was on too.
Yeah, we did
recording,
20 in
yeah.
2019.
Yeah.
We went up through. I can't remember if we went up through Hoist or Billy Breathes, but we should. What do you guys think about albums? What do you have to say about that to that caller? What kind of
I think it's a
message do you
really
have?
interesting series that we could do, especially the later stuff. I mean, I think he's right. I think that there's a fascinating stepping stone because it is, you listen to Fish shows and they're always kind of in motion. We talked about that a lot during our series, that like you'd hear kind of a peak of a sound, and then by the end of a tour, they're on to whatever comes next. And with the albums, it is so much of like a stamp in time. I mean, for me, Rift and Round Room always speak to me as records that showcase a few things I love that the band was trying at the time, from a songwriting standpoint, from a live recording standpoint, from a thematic building, like a world standpoint, from a middle-agedness standpoint. So I'd love to talk more about those in depth. I think a lot of the stories you read about Billy Breathes and like Prince Caspian, the solo being recorded at Dawn, and the Blob recordings, and then like, you know, what they were doing a year later in Bearsville, like it's clear that their approach to the studio has been, in a lot of cases, as experimental as their approach to the stage. The interesting thing about them is where most bands you would reach for a studio album first and then a live show. With Fish, you do the reverse. So you end up hearing like kind of an overview of a sound, all kind of encapsulated in 45 minutes.
For me, that's how I discovered Fish, was actually through Rift. So for me, it kind of was that way, but I would love to go deep again on Rift and Billy Breathes. Those are my 2 favorites. And I also think it'd be interesting to think about the change that happened with the band with recording. I mean, once they got the barn, and I think they have a totally different way that they record live or their albums now, compared to back then. And it'd be fun to kind of go through that and watch how it evolved and changed.
All right, we're gonna add it to the list. Okay,
The ever-growing list.
Megan, are we going to talk about 2015 or the end of 2014? Are we doing any context, history, stage setting? Or are we just going?
I don't really
going
think we
straight
need
to it?
to. I think we
Okay.
need to just go
Great.
into it, because if you want to know more about 2014, 2015, we have some really great episodes that have just come out about them. You can look at our 40 for 40 on both of those years and dive into those. And then you can also look at, we covered the 2015 tour as well. So I think there's enough to look into, I think, unless you guys disagree.
No,
Well, I
I
have
think
kind of like a
that's- I think
big
that's great.
picture. I
Okay,
have like a big
Brian.
picture question to ask.
Let's do it.
Okay, good.
I'm not requiring you to pull up your notes and stuff. But, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just, I'm on a podcast, like I'm just asking questions here. We're back in that era, you know. What are your guys' thoughts? Because this show feels to me like a like a full demarcation line, but the band leading up to this point and the band after this point are in a lot of ways different. And we're going to get into that, but like, what are your thoughts on pre 2015 3.0 Fish? You know, for so '09 to 2015 or late 2014, as we sit here a decade later.
To me, I've always felt like there were moments of greatness, certain tours or moments that stood out, but I think this is when the band really starts to make a turn toward like consistency. I think 2016 is a bit of a dip. I think 15 and 17 are so strong. 2016 is always kind of reminding me of 1996 in that way that it's like this kind of peak between between two valleys, but or excuse me, valley between two peaks. But I think that, you know, to me, I don't go back to '09 to pre like 9 to 15 very often. And it's interesting when I was actually looking at the number of jams, like over 20 minutes in that period. It is so small. And I think that that's why, especially how I like to listen to Fish now and what I'm listening for is I'm listening for, you know, big exploratory jams. And so there just weren't that many then. And to me, it just felt like they, didn't connect consistently back then.
I mean,
What do you think, RJ?
I think the 2013 fall tour was the first turning point. I also think that before this, the 2014 Halloween was a real big step. Also, just in terms of making new original music that people actually wanted to hear, which I think was different from their Halloween experience the year before. Not any fault of theirs, but like, you know, that like really I think pushed them into a new space, like with that thrilling chilling set. This was also like a couple days after like probably the least memorable New Year's show of the last like 20 years. Just in terms of like the gag and it was just sort of like like
a small gag.
We got to do something. So I don't know. I mean, I always think about this as it, you know, Fare Thee Well, of course, is like the biggest thing I think that happens in 2015. And so we're like just before this, but you start to hear some of the progression in music in shows like these, which I think is one of the most interesting reasons to kind of like look back at this run. But I don't know. I feel like fall 2013 into summer 2014, like with Fuego, you know, in 2014 started to like push these sonic spaces like pretty heavily in a way that hadn't been done before. So I feel like fall 2013 pushed them off the cliff in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I fall pretty much where you guys are at in the sense that I don't think any of us expected when they came back in 2009, and I think it took a little while for people to get used to the idea that it was going to be a lot harder for them to be the Fish that we remembered. And I think by 2015, we had gotten used to this idea that you will have these peaks like Dick's 2012, fall 2013, Halloween 2014. But a lot of what Fish is now is they were older. It seemed at this point less interested in like full blown experimentation. There was a bit more of a structure to the shows. It seemed like they were all really trying to develop, especially Mike and Trey, their side projects. So Fish was a part of their lives. It wasn't their lives. And it's so wild to go back and listen to a show like this now, knowing how we felt then, because we were 6 years into 3.0. We felt like this was the norm. The band would have like 2 or 3 really, really good shows, a tour, but a lot of shows would be some songs up front, maybe a jam in the second set, but some weird flow. And what you were hoping for was tight playing and maybe like a good 15-minute jam. And now, 10 years later, it's totally different. Like the things that I think people were like dreaming about on Fish Twitter in late 2014 and early 2015 seemed preposterous. It seemed ridiculous. It seemed out of the realm of possibility. If you had told someone that you would get things like the Baker's Dozen or like 30+ minute long jams on a relatively regular basis, or 4-song second sets, or deep jams in set one. And that's all now a reality. And it's wild to go back and listen to a show like this and listen to a time like this, because the Miami New Year's Eve run, I really like from a tightness and playing standpoint. Like 1-1, the New Year's Eve or the New Year's Day show is kind of derided. There's no real jams, but if you listen to it just as like a song performance standpoint, it sounds really good. but you're going back and listening to a time where they were much more in the box, and yet they're still trying to figure out a way out of it. And it's so wild to listen now 10 years later and think they figured out a way out of it unexpectedly, so deep into the 3.0 experience, and it's essentially rewritten the back half of their career.
It's so fascinating too, because this year is a really light year, probably due to Fare Thee Well, but there's only 30 shows this year. And
Yeah.
then you have Fare Thee Well this summer. And then it's interesting that they spent so much time, like you were saying, on side projects too. Mike was touring a lot, Tab was touring a lot. And it almost reinvigorated the band in a way that I think is really important to where they went next.
Agree.
This just happens to be the trip that I went on the last time that Ohio State won the national championship. It's completely coincidental that we're talking
Wow,
about
those
this
are good
today.
vibes going into tonight. I like
Yeah.
that. I like that for you.
I went down. I guess we went down on the first because I went to the first and second by myself, or no, I went to the first by myself with some friends, and apparently, according to Fish.net, the first has a 2.9 rating, which has to be one of the lowest ratings of
It's
any
so
show I've ever
low.
seen. The Winter Queen in the second set is the thing I remember the most, which is jam charted, but maybe that says something about the show. But I saw this, the second and the third, and this was the last night of the run. And going back, it's fun to listen to, but Miami's weird, like it's just kind of a strange place, especially like coming from the East Coast.
It is, and it's interesting that we've gotten 4 Florida-based New Year's Eve runs, including 3 in this venue that really has nothing to do with Fish history in any sort of way. And whereas like Vegas has almost been reclaimed after 2004, like they play Vegas regularly, especially with
Yeah.
Sphere. I don't really see any sort of urge on the band side to like make Miami a destination. I guess that's what Mexico is now. Like, why would you go
Yeah.
to Miami when you have Mexico?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I think
I don't
that's
know.
true.
I don't know why they didn't. Why they just there's like people in the chat asking like why did they? I don't know. They
I
just,
seem to
Wanted to
remember
be in
that
nice weather.
I seem to remember that there was some like the Knicks scheduled an NBA game there in advance, and they were in the middle of like contract renegotiations with MSG, so it was like we'll do 1 year off and then we'll come back.
Mm,
this was like before Jim Dolan and Trey were like exchanging text
Good
messages
buddies.
every
Best
day.
friends, yeah. Announcing
which
a New
is-
Year's in Miami is like my biggest nightmare. I'm always like, no, don't do it. Don't do it.
No offense to our Florida
Yeah,
listeners. Thank
sorry.
you so much for supporting us. It's just like I think we stayed in like a condo building. There's like 7,000 condo buildings is within like 3 miles of downtown Miami. It's a strange place. But anyway, okay.
So you went down there for the football game?
No. I went
Oh.
down just for 3 shows. And the
Oh,
first night,
interesting.
on the first, after that show, I ran over to a bar which was across the street from the venue to watch the end of the Ohio State Alabama game when Ohio State beat Alabama and to go to the national championship. And there were like 30 people that we were all together, and we all went to this bar after, and they thought I was like completely. It was just like not
They
Fish
saw a
fans were
new
like,
side of you.
what is wrong with you? Because I was just screaming, and it was just so great. And sorry, we don't have to go through it, but anyway,
No, that was
We
the
won
first
by a
year of the college
touchdown.
football playoff, and I remember
Yeah.
the expectation was just like this is Alabama's to win. They're going to beat Ohio State. Same old story, and it really
Exactly.
kind of kicked off the lore of this tournament.
Exactly. And we beat them by a touchdown, and it was like no one expected us to beat Alabama. Beating an SEC team back then. All right, we don't have to go into this. It's too much. Megan, what was your first thought going back to this show? What did you think about this show going back?
Well, I haven't listened to this show a lot. I've probably listened to the show twice before.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of fun to go back to it. And this is a year that's kind of a little bit of a blind spot for me. I didn't see any Fish in 2015. I moved back to the States in 2014, and I saw a Randall's Island show. But I didn't see any show in 2015. Maybe my only year that I haven't seen a Fish show since they came back in 2009. And so it's kind of just away then. And so it's fun for me to go back and think about where the band was, and also just think about how different they are. I think what you were saying earlier, Brian, is really something I was thinking about a lot. And just thinking about how great it is to play a show like this too at the end of a run. I think a lot of the times we talk about, this is something that we talked about a lot, like during the fall tour, not this year, but the year before. When you play a few nights in a venue, you really want to build up and have that last night be like the exclamation point. I think they do that so well here. The whole second set of this show, which we're going to talk about, obviously, is just, it's so perfect. And then there's such an exclamation point at the end of the show. And I think that being able to play a New Year's run, it's just so weird to start a run on New Year's Eve, I think, too, and then play into it. I saw like a New Year's Day show at MSG before. Great show, actually. I was overserved, but this show, I think, to play this good of a show like 4 days after New Year's Eve, I think is fantastic, and it's fun to go back to.
The 1-2-16 show is still one of my favorites I've ever seen.
Yeah,
MSG. That was like
Mhm.
That,
such a great thing to just like see a show like a couple days after the big day.
the big
They should
day,
do that more.
exactly.
that
I
show
can't decide
reminds
if I like it or
me
not.
of this show.
Hmm.
Like they feel like mirror
Mhm.
twins in a way. It's a very classic. Not a lot of like there are segues, but there's not like a crazy sandwich. There's not like crazy bust outs. It's just like very solid rotational songs being played very well in a fluid manner. Like if Fish were the type of band that would just release like a live album, this strikes me as like a live album release. It's just there's not
Mhm.
there's not a ton of messing around. And 1-2-16 is the same way. Like that show is anchored by a very, very solid, uplifting 20+ minute tweezer. And around it, just great song choices that are played really well. Like that type of structure was the goal in early 3.0 Fish. Like it's hard to remember
Yeah.
when you go back that there were a lot of shows that straight up did not work at all. Or you got like
So
30
true.
minutes of really good music scattered throughout, and the rest of it you're like, why are they playing this song right now? Like what the hell's going on? Like the
Yeah.
2 nights prior, the reason why that show has a 2.0 or 2.9 rating is they open the second set with like Twist, Piper, Prince Caspian 20 years later. None of them, then Winter Queen, none of them jam. They're just played really well. So in context, you're like in the moment, you're like, what are we doing here? And that happened a lot in
Yeah,
during the shows
yeah.
this time. Like
My first show that I saw when they came back in 2009 was the June 4th, 2009 at Jones Beach. This is a 3.0 rating. I just looked it up. I mean, Time Turns Elastic in like the prime spot in the second set. It was preceded by Meat Stick. I mean, followed by Waste. Like it was just like this show was like, it was also pouring rain. It was freezing. It was horrible. But this show, I just was like, wow, okay, like I have to get my head right. Like the last show I'd seen before then was like in 99. And I was like, okay, I really need to like understand what Fish is now. It's different. It's totally different.
Yeah.
I just want to say that the Time Turns Elastic is maybe the only instance ever of Trey being like, okay, fine, I'll stop. Stop playing a song. Like
Totally.
think about how many songs he's played over the years where it's just like, fuck you,
Yeah.
I'm gonna play what I want. That was like the one where he's like, all right.
I mean,
it does take a long time. You guys are right. Like a long
it's
time.
undeniable.
Better for like an orchestra or something.
Yeah.
This first set is like kind of fine. Was there any highlights for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really solid first set. It's really like some interesting set list calls, but they don't like completely ruin it at all. Like it doesn't have bad flow. You've got the second show opener in 3.0 of Maze, the first one at Dick's, really like punchy AC/DC bag next. I think that everything's played really well. Like Plasma has like its third time out. And even like Devotion to a Dream kind of works here. I think it's good. The Melt is a little sloppy, but overall, I think it's like a good solid first set of Fish.
Yeah, you get the 10th Melt opener ever. Like you said, first since 9/4/11. Those are the only two since 1.0. Maze, excuse me. Cavern in the 4 slot is kind of a rare spot. Like there's something about that song not closing a set that
Yeah.
it feels a little bit more special. Plasma, it's kind of wild. Like I feel like I really like this song, but I feel almost like they haven't totally ever figured out where to place this song in a show in 10 years. There's some really great versions. Like we got an awesome one at Deer Creek this last year coming out of that Chalk Dust. We got a great one opening the last night at Sphere. It's
Mhm.
interesting to hear it in kind of like its early setting. It's only been played 37 times. So like it's still kind of figuring its way out. Devotion to a Dream, we haven't heard since 10, 15, 16. This is like the peak period for Devotion to a Dream being played. And then you're right about the Melt. Like it really hammers home that before they had synthesizers on these jams, like before Page got his 2017 rig, Split Up and Melt was a lot of just like noise. And like it really showcases how much technology impacts this band in a really powerful way, because now Melt is one of the show-stopping moments of pretty much any show it's played. Here, it's cool, but it doesn't really like, it never really comes around and clicks.
Well, it has to be perfect when it's played old school like that.
Yes.
Like without the synths, you have to nail every fucking change, and he doesn't. So it stands out more.
Yeah. What do you guys think
Yeah.
of Son of a Mule?
No, thank
Horrible.
you.
Just in general. Just
No.
in
Bad.
general.
No,
Bad.
never
Leave
want
it.
it. Never want it.
Awful.
Never
Why?
want it.
Tell me.
It's just like a long song that's just like like I don't want that. I have no interest in that. It takes up a ton of real estate. I don't like it. No.
It has no
Mm-mm.
upside, really.
No upside.
I liked it at this point when they were doing Marimba Lumina jams in the middle of it. I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah,
But it
I
also
guess.
like showed the ceiling of Marimba Lumina inserts into like moments. And like,
There's a low ceiling for that.
I remember when he got that, people were like, oh, this is going to change their sound. And like he uses it during
Mm-mm.
Mercury, Petrichor, and Son of a Mule. And like, I don't really know any other specific moments where Marimba Lumina has changed a jam. Maybe like when Trey was playing it in summer 2016.
I feel very lucky having only seen it 8 times ever, including my first show, because in those 95, 96, 97, 98, like you could run
Oh,
into it.
94. Yeah, they played it like every
Yeah, maybe I
show.
skipped the
That's probably
I
why.
missed, but like I'm pretty sure that well, actually, the lowest ranked show I've ever seen definitely is where they played Son of a Mule, Girls, 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 back in the Son of a Mule, 4/15/04 in Vegas.
That is
That's amazing.
the
I mean-
worst Fish performance I've ever seen live. with my life.
1.9 on Fish Night. That's pretty bad.
That's amazing.
I've somehow
I'm
seen
trying
it
to
6
see-
times, and
Oh, you have? So you've seen it almost as many
Oh.
times as I have.
I've seen it
Yeah.
8. So yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
Wow.
It's not that often anymore. Thank God.
Actually, you know what? If they played it now, it's probably better now than it was before. They play it once every 2 or 3 years.
Yeah,
That's
I mean,
enough.
if you're looking at since 2016, it's been played 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times. So you're not really getting a ton of Son of Mules out there.
Yeah.
I don't know. I maybe it's this bias that it's the second song played during the first tape that I heard, 11/17/94, and I really liked that they went into like the German dance breakdown in the
Yeah.
middle of it.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, this is cool. Like no band's ever done this. I've always like been okay with it while also accepting that the entire fan base hates it in the same manner I feel about My Soul.
We got a comment here on YouTube from Ed or EDD. I don't know if that's Ed or just
Those are
EDD, but
That's a great call. Those are great versions.
will you read them,
Mhm.
Brian?
Yeah, the Mule with Bela Fleck, which I believe is from 94.
Yeah.
would say. I think
think
from
so.
Nashville 94.
Mhm. Yeah.
The Went
Definitely
Mule is great in the third set, although people would argue against its placement. I think it's a good version. And then the one with Magia in, I think that's Stuttgart 97, February 97. Really, really great version.
10,
Yeah, I
18,
mean, there's
94
good
for
versions
those
of
you
every
keeping track.
song. Doesn't
Yeah.
mean
Are
that
there?
it's a good song. I mean, mostly. Except maybe
Let's go.
myself.
Okay, you know what? We're just talking about one show today. Let's talk about a song that there aren't any good versions of. Go ahead. You go first, Brian.
Time turns elastic.
There's probably not a great version of Devotion to a Dream.
Yeah.
Like it's just kind of there. 20 versions, none since 10, 15, 16. I think that is an example of Trey being like, okay, I heard you on Wingsuit. I'm going to keep Fuego. I'll trade you all Devotion to a Dream.
I saw in Fish.net someone compared Devotion to a Dream to Going Down the Road Feeling Bad, which I felt like was sacrilegious. I was
Wow.
like, how dare you? That just, it didn't make sense to me. And I feel like it's, no,
Yeah.
I
disagree.
don't agree with that. Megan, do you have a song that you don't think there's a good version of?
I mean, I think My Soul Always Sucks. And maybe like, yeah, Time Turns Elastic. I don't ever want to hear that at a Fish show. I could probably think of others. I'll think of them and I'll let you know.
I just, one thing we forgot to mention or didn't mention last week is that My Soul obviously is a cover, and it ended up in the vocal jam of that 4/11/94 show, which we talked about last week. We had Scott on.
That was
I
the
wonder if
first
that was the
time it
first
had ever
time
been
that My
played.
Soul showed up.
It was.
I mean, it doesn't count as being played though.
No, but we didn't talk about it, but I looked it up. It is. That's the first
It
time they
is.
ever played it.
Ever,
Mhm. And then it didn't come out for like 2 more years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Mhm. Yeah.
let's imagine if they had been like, cool, that was a one-time fun thing. We probably won't play that song.
It's
All
not
right.
bad in the vocal jam. It's kind of a cool thing, but it's, yeah. So maybe that's the best version of My Soul.
Far be it from me to try to convince you guys that vocal jams can be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's impossible.
It's cool when My Soul is in the vocal jam. Yeah, that's great rationale, Meg. Tell me more, please. Come on.
You know what's cool is when they play a really short vocal jam that goes into Ghost. That is fucking cool.
Yeah, that had to be sick in the room.
Yeah, it must have been.
I want to just I don't know totally how to convey this, but like the vibe of this first set was that it was really good in the moment. Like I vividly remember being on Fish Twitter, this first set ending and people being like, wow, that was great. Total change from the last couple of nights. And it just brings me back to my thought of like 10 years ago, the expectations around this band were very different than they are today. It just like, it was a completely different era. We had really accepted that Fish was like, it's a really good vibe with sometimes some cool things happening. Now, some of those moments sound really, really good in hindsight. RJ is absolutely right, and I will defend along with you to the death that Fall 13 is one of the greatest tours that the band has ever played. I'm a huge fan of certain jams that happen in 2014, like the Chalk Dust from Randall's Island. There's just really, really great moments, but the expectation was not that this band was going to come out and just like melt faces on command. I think everyone had accepted they're in a new era. It's a little bit older. It's a little bit less adventurous. And so like a set like this, it wasn't like this is the greatest first set since blank, but it was really warmly received in a way that I think today, if they played this, people would be like, what the hell's wrong with the band?
I think that's true.
Yeah, for sure. They'd be
I mean,
like,
I had fun.
This flow is super fucked up. And we would have issues with it if it was played today. But
Yeah,
what
but
was
it's
your
just-
experience being there?
Yeah, I mean, it was Fish. It was fun. It was just like a Fish show in 2015. No one knew that like Fish was going to come back and play for 6 years and do interesting stuff like that Halloween 2014.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like
Right.
it was all like playing with house money at this point. And it is crazy to think about that. That was 10 years ago, and we've had so much innovation since then. Okay, before we get into set 2, let's take a break for our people. All right. Brian, in our text chain, you said that something about this Down with Disease jam in the second set in Brinkmanian fashion, that it was a something. What did you say? You said it was important symbolically, but now I can't remember exactly what you said.
Well, I think so you get a couple things in this jam that were just very rare instances. Like the Randall's Chalk Dust was 6 months prior, and it's really hard to find more than 3 jams in between the Randall's Chalk Dust and this that stretch into the 25-minute mark. It just wasn't really a big theme of the era. This strikes me as a band. Another interesting thing is like there's almost no effects that Trey plays, and there's no synthesizers that you get from Page. So what you get is this band that is really just kind of playing almost as close to unplugged as you could imagine Fish playing. And it's all about chordal connection. It's all about riff connection. It's all about Like, do we have the proper groove to build things up? And there's a very patient building groove that you get within this jam, where for a good 3 or 4 minutes, the band is kind of not interested in peaking. They're just kind of playing around in this musical space. And it sounds pretty basic to what we expect from this band nowadays because of the added layers and effects and weird ideas and dystopian sounds. But it is really, to my ears, a band once again slowly figuring out how do we recreate the thing that separates us from just a great rock show. And then to tap it off, there's a solid peak. Again, not as ferocious of a peak as you would expect today, but then about 2 to 3 minutes on the back end of kind of weird Trey plays kind of a minor chord, Page plays something weird on his clav, Fishman's kind of experimenting with kind of off rhythm. Mike has a few effects on and creates some kind of sonic vibes. Like, you really start to hear this that post-peak experimentation that's going to take over about 3 years later, that is going to lead us to some of the greater jams that we've gotten in the breakdown and structure that we experience. So to my ears, you hear like the brightness of fall 2013 and summer 2015 that really was the defining sound of Phish at their best during this period in time, but also starting to mess around with structure and form in a way that is going to be essential to what happens at the Baker's Dozen, what happens in fall 18, what happens for like the MSG Tweezer from 12/30/19, all the stuff we've heard from 4.0. Like, you're just hearing that base level experimentation there. So I'm curious if you guys heard the same thing and what your thoughts are.
Yeah, it's really interesting thinking about that it was more about kind of structure and form, and also this idea of them being sort of unplugged. That really is resonating with me. I was thinking a lot about what you were talking about with the fact that there just haven't been this many 25-minute jams. Like, I looked for over 20-minute jams in 3.0 up until this point, and this was the 6th one. And I have a little list. Can I read them for you?
Oh, I'm here for lists, man.
Wow. Look at
Okay.
you coming
Yeah, I have a
prepared,
list.
Megan, with extra
Come with a
credit.
list.
Okay.
Come on.
God.
Okay, so it's
Unbelievable.
the first over 20-minute jam of 3.0 is the 526 Bethel Waves. The second one is the 731, the Tahoe Tweezer from 2013. Then the 7814, the Man Fuego. The 71314, Randall's Island Chalk Dust. Then the 11214, Vegas Yam. And then this Miami Downward Disease on 1/5/15. That is
And
6 years.
And that
Like-
takes into account all You Enjoy Myselfs also?
Yeah. hmm
Wow.
Yeah.
Because most of
really
those were
crazy.
like 18,
Mhm.
19 minutes.
They were under
yeah.
20. And what's crazy is that this is 6 years. Like, this is a really long time. If you think about that, how long people were kind of not getting those really big jams. And it's true. I think you really did set your mind to like a different Phish experience. And I think when it went outside of that box and when you got one of these monster jams, it felt super special, but it did not feel like it would ever become the regular thing again. And
Yes.
I do really think that this jam, especially to play this in the beginning of the year in a New Year's run, you know, in a light where they're heading into a light year, like, it had to be something that they held on to, I think. And I think the jam, I think you described it really well, Brian. It's really easy listening in a way. And I don't mean that as an insult. It's very effortless and it has a sense of flow and danceability that's really nice. And it's all super interesting and engaging, but it's nothing agitated or anxious at all. And I think that that works really well here. And to me, it's interesting looking at this list of what did go beyond and why. And those jams are all, I think, really different. And it's cool to think about. But I was really thinking about historically, like, where this band was and where they were in terms of jamming big jams, especially because that's so much how we determine if Phish shows are good now, which is so interesting.
Right.
That was some real brinkmanship you brought to the pod, Meg.
I'm trying. I
Proud
am a
of you.
brink maniac. Let's be real.
You are. You are.
I am.
Yeah, it's cool. Like that. It's a cool like last 4 minutes of that Down with Disease jam before they go into light. It has a little like almost reggae-ish breakdown.
Like Plinko, yeah.
Yeah, which is cool. And that there, it's a good set. I mean, the light and the Sneak and Sally and the sand are all, it flows really well. The Steel and Time
I
opener
think
is
the
like
set's
fine, but
awesome.
yeah, the flow is really good.
Yeah, I mean,
I think
go ahead, Brian.
Well, I was just gonna say, I think that's it. You don't. It's not just the disease. It's then
No.
afterwards, Light, Sally, Sand, Hood, Susie Greenberg. Like nobody is going to argue with those songs. There's no let's pause and play some ballad that Trey really wants to play right now, and some people are going to be into, other people are going to tolerate, other people are going to hate. Like it's just this is.
Looking at you, Life Beyond the Dream.
This is, like greatest hits second set Fish material.
Life in
where-
slow motion. Feet in
Feed
the
it in
clay.
the clay. I'm going nowhere.
The last calendar year before more was written. It's interesting.
Wow.
There's a moment in history.
There is. No, I like more. I know you guys do too, especially
I
you,
love
RJ.
more.
But you guys know what I mean. We're like they're
Yeah,
coming. There's no like
100%.
they're coming out of Sally and then fade out, and okay, we'll just do the mid-tempo adult contemporary ballad
Yeah.
here. And then we'll do Sand and Hood. It's like no, Sally goes into Sand, and then Sand continues the kind of vibe of it, and then Sand goes into Hood, which is I know RJ you're gonna talk about here shortly, but like the flow is really important here because again, I don't mean to harp on this, but that was not happening. That was not
No.
like there's a lot of second sets that started out with a cool 18-minute long jam and then would just like who was making the calls to these songs? Like what was the intentionality here? And this set does not have that. It's not really outside the box, but at this time we were more looking for what this was versus expecting the band to come out and just like blow the building apart type of thing.
Yeah, we were looking for a good box. We didn't expect the box to explode. We were just like, just give us a good box. And I
Yeah.
think that this does, like the light, it's only 10 minutes, but it has some like really intriguing moments. There's some like nice juicy jamming from Paige and Mike. And the last minute's super cool. It has like reverb and like agitated washes of sound. It sounds like it could go somewhere, but then there's a pretty cool segue into Sneak and Sally, which has like a gorgeous effortless peak. It gets like swampy and then it segues into Sand. And like you were saying, I mean, it's just even Sand is like type 1, but it has some really good stuff in it. And so it comes as a whole piece of like really good jamming. I think Down with Disease through Sand is like fantastic fish.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's worth reiterating that, like at this point in Fish, if you weren't seeing shows in 2014, like really there was no expectation of this is the last night of a 4-night run, right? So, at this point, it's like you go to the last night, and if you're Megan, you're expecting Iculus or something, or you're expecting something
No, totally.
something huge
Insane.
and magical. At this point, it's
Mhm.
just like, yeah, cool. Fish is still playing, and they're still like fun to go see, and you still get to go hang out with your friends and see music. There wasn't really any
That's exactly what it was
expectation
like.
of like anything. It was just like, cool, good show, had fun.
It's also like this is before like Mexico becomes routine. So like we're expecting Fish in between New Year's and summer tour, or random 8-night runs through the spring on the side in this on the West Coast, and then like the only real tradition we had was New Year's and Dick's and summer tour, and some
Mhm.
years you'd get really lucky and there'd be a fall tour, and so you knew going into this show this is literally the last time we're going to hear this band until whenever summer tour happens. And there were all these rumors at the time of GD50. I don't think it had been announced at this point in time. But like, you mentioned RJ, how much work Trey's going to do between now and the summer, which is going to have a big impact on the way that they sound over the summer. But this is almost like an end of an era for this band because, you won't get a ton of shows in 2017, but you will start to get this like, let's break out and try new things. The Mexico thing becomes an ingrained thing. I think a lot of people thought the first time that was announced, that's the only time it's going to happen. The Baker's Dozen allows them to rethink what a summer tour could be. Even in 2019, they're playing, like this small little fall tour at a time of year that they hadn't really toured in the 3.0 era. I don't know, like it seems weird to look back on this and think like how much of the year we did not have new Fish, whereas today it feels just kind of sprinkled out throughout the year in a way that I think probably adds to the experimentation.
Definitely. Yeah, it's true. Even like, because even in 1.0, you would go 6 months without having live fish, like
Mhm.
regularly.
By the end of it, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I also think, like, Megan, you said this a while ago. I can't remember if it was about fall 24 or before that, but like the expectations are because they keep raising the bar, And I think at this point in early 2015, there wasn't really like a high bar. It was just sort of like
No.
they're still playing. We're going to hear interesting stuff. It's still fun. It's still interesting enough that you're going to like travel and spend money to go see them, but your expectations weren't the way they are now, which is like you're expecting something amazing every show.
Yeah, and I think that maybe this is wrong to say, and maybe people will judge me for this, but when I was seeing fish at this point in 2014, 16, it was a nostalgia act for me. Like I was seeing
Mm,
them because it was nostalgic, not
mm.
because they were performing like that, but I was doing it to remember what it was like when I was a teenager. Now it's a totally different experience. After the Baker's Dozen, it became completely different for me. But
Yeah.
definitely before then, it was something I was doing because it reminded me of a time when it was really important to me.
And I almost wonder how much of this was that for them too. People are going to show up,
Right?
but like we don't necessarily have to push the envelope. It's not as stressful as it got in the late 90s and in 2.0. The system kind of
Mhm.
worked from a managerial standpoint. Like you kind of are starting to hear at this point in time them get a little bored with like the system that they have in place and figure out ways out of it, which is probably part of what leads to such a renaissance that we've been living with fish for the last 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, you have these moments, like I kept mentioning Halloween 14, but there are these moments that are really cool, but they hadn't done a festival in a few years to this point. It's interesting that these shows, I don't think any of these 4 shows, the New Year's Eve run, had any of the thrilling, chilling. Oh no, they did the dogs on New Year's Eve, but that's it.
And they
But
did
like,
Is
Martian
that it
Monster.
though?
They
oh, they
did
did
Martian
Martian
Monster.
Monster.
Mhm.
Yeah, because
like-
that second set is actually pretty solid and ends with Martian Monster, and the place just like
Yeah.
at least
Yeah,
I
They,
like
they
that
didn't
that's
like
place
bring
great.
that back.
locked it.
They didn't like bring that back for any of the other shows, the next 3,
Yeah.
which like they could have, I think they were still
Yeah.
trying to figure out how to work some of that stuff into the repertoire.
Yeah, and you
You know?
get like an interesting moment. The Weekapaw Groove turns into a percussion Marima Lumina bass jam that has some like weird. I'm just looking at the notes here. It has a "The Birds" quote within it, so like
Oh,
Yeah.
right.
that kind of initially caught on as like a little jokey moment, and you would hear that throughout 2015 and 2016 all the time. That was a really fun moment in an otherwise kind of like ho hum, kind of low key show.
That Mike song, that whole Mike's Groove is pretty cool.
It is,
Mike's
yeah.
in the 46 days.
Yeah.
Great 46 days, and then the
Yeah.
Weekapaug is like, I think it's like 17 or 18 minutes, which was so long at the time, and it's a
Yeah.
little abstract and a little weird. Like they were starting to figure out what can we push against,
Yeah.
Mhm.
because it seemed like they really wanted a structured rock show that people wanted to come to and come back to, and was a really good vibe, and we're a little afraid to break the mold there, and these type of moments help them do that.
Yep.
Like Wrigley 2016 is still in the future, like we're still going to have high profile bad shows. Don't get me wrong. But
Let's go through all of them.
it's cracks in the
right.
glass ceiling. That would be a great series. It'd be so controversial.
Yeah.
Our march through the worst fish shows.
The
in
worst
business.
shows.
Oh man.
Next up. Oh, but man, that was my 50th
Yeah.
show. It's the best
Yeah.
time of my life. I was with my boys.
My boys. Hey, don't knock it till you try it, Brian. So I've mentioned this. Do you guys both know the
You think I've
story
never
about
gone to a concert with my boys? Come on. Like,
No,
I've
not
had
in-
great
not in the way you
times
were
with
just
the dudes.
describing. the way you're just describing with that kind of boys energy? Excited for you.
Oh man,
Um,
2016. That's definitely on there. I
Ah,
played hooky from
I was
work
at
that day,
Yeah.
and I saw you, and I was like, I just drove 2.5 hours for this.
Yeah, I saw
Mhm.
both those shows. I was okay. Have I told you guys both the story about the hood in the show for me? Do
You
guys
you
know
have
it?
hinted to the story. I think you might have told it to me once, but please share
I've only heard it
Give you
via
a solo
text.
layout.
No,
for-
no,
You know,
no,
which-
don't do
which
the
is not the
solo layout,
same.
please, please.
Talent
So
shows.
I've never had a like I don't know. I've seen a lot of shows. I'm just, I don't know. Maybe we're all like this, but I'm not really like music change. This concert changed my life, man, sort of person. But I know people are, and that's great. But
Mhm.
it just doesn't happen to me. I haven't had any life changing moments at concerts. I've had some like realizations and all that stuff. Mostly, you smoke some weed, you get some space to think. You like, oh, I've been
Some
thinking
deep
about this thing.
thoughts.
This show was about a month after my dad died, and we went down to do this few shows just to get out of the, just to like go down and have a weekend away.
Yeah.
And I found my friend Scott, who has been on the show a bunch. I was with Rachel, and we found our friend Scott, and we knew that Hood was going to be played, and Scott and I try to find each other when we're both at shows. Like we knew, anyone who was there knew that they were going to play Hood because it was the last night and they hadn't played it in 4 shows, etc. So anyway, I wasn't really like prepared for anything, but I during the jam at some point there was like this moment where I looked up and one of the lights I was kind of on Mike's side of the stage, like I was just looking into the light for some reason, which I never look at individual lights because it's just like but sometimes your eyes are closed or whatever. Anyway, I got this feeling, this like overwhelming feeling of like my dad communicating with me. Like this is like it's all gonna be fine. Like you can just like you can move on. Like everything's gonna be fine, which was like really crazy. And I'll never forget it. And that's the only time it's ever happened to me. I never expect it to happen again. I don't know what it was. It was just me like mentally reflecting on the moment, but not in a way where I was just in my head. It was like
Totally.
in the process with the music. Then it was crazy. It was wild.
Mm.
I was like pretty freaked out by the whole thing.
I think
So-
that's so beautiful.
You're so rational that you're just like,
I
I
know.
can't have this type of moment happen to me
Yeah.
right here, but also like, holy crap. Yeah. That's
Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Well, I mean, I think that like those experiences are so rare, especially for people who aren't looking for them. But I think, sometimes music opens up like a neural pathway that maybe you was closed before and allowed you to, receive something that was there for you. And I think
Yeah.
that's fucking amazing. And
That's a good way to put it. It's like sound therapy or something. It's like any music can open that. That's a good point.
yeah, I think that
It's-
that art does that, right? It allows you to think of things in a new way or allow things that you thought were impossible to happen. And that's a perfect example of you needing something. And, whether it came from outside or whether it came from inside, it still came and you were there to hear it. And that's just awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty intense.
It speaks to Trey talks about being a conduit and
Yeah.
like allowing the music to just come through him, and the fact that there are moments that affect individual people at the show that they'll never be aware of,
Yeah.
but you have that all the same. It's really special. That's really cool. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah. Thanks for letting me share. I think like it's just funny. Like a lot of shows, it's like you hear someone at every show say like, "Well, they played that song for me," and you're like,
Yeah.
my initial reaction is like, definitely not. But also, why not?
Yeah. Why
know?
not? Exactly.
not?
If
Yeah.
they want to think it's for them, like that's great.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
we should be like more open to those experiences and less cynical. Probably all of us, especially on a day like today.
Especially on a day like today. Yeah, I think we should start a new series of moments when I thought that the band played a song just for me. We'll go through all of our shows and talk through
It
those
can
moments.
be a good thing or a bad thing. And RJ Beehive forever.
Oh my
That's
god!
it.
I'll tell you what. We'll start with every possum.
Yeah,
We'll go with
exactly.
every.
As a fuck you, as a personal fuck you from Trey.
Oh my god!
Every time Trey ripcorded a jam and you were like, you did that because you knew I
Yeah.
wanted it to go longer.
Exactly. Fuck
It's
you.
all the things Trey did to piss me off on purpose. All right. What else? Any other takeaways from like this show or this era? End of an era, Brian said.
I mean, I feel like it was tough to tell in the moment. And like, obviously, like we said, there's a lot of still ups and downs, but I've always like summer 2015 has always felt very different to me from the years prior.
Yeah.
With
Mhm.
fall 13 kind of being the only outlier, but like things just seem to move in a very different direction. And it's cool to go back to a show like this. I think you guys are right. It peaks a run, which was another kind of thing from this era of fish fandom, was like the Sunday show phenomenon, and the idea
Yeah.
that this was
Yeah.
on a Saturday, but like the idea that the final night of a run has to be magical. And so you can, Friday night can be kind of a hang. Saturday night can be a little bit more for like the, overflow fans that showed up at the venue. Sunday night is just us, and it's the band kind of, opening kind of the doors to their past and like giving you a little bit more fish mythology. And you get that in a show like this. It really has that sort of Sunday show end of a run type of feel to it in a really cool way.
I think it's kind of fun to think about what's ahead of them. They're going to go. Fish Trey's going to do fairly well. They're going to play their 13th greatest tour of all time this summer, which is pretty exciting. Deemed by us. And then they've got Magnaball. I mean, what a moment! And yeah, there's a lot ahead of them this year, and it's an important year for them in 3.0 in moving forward. I think you had to have years like this. They had to have years like this to want to continue to stretch out and like you were saying, Brian, take risks and push against the edge. I think they had to have years like this to do that.
Megan, you ready for a good segue?
I can't wait. Yeah, let's
You know who's
hear
got
it.
a big year ahead of them?
Who?
HF Pod. Because we
Yes.
got we got new episodes coming,
We
and
do.
we have a new series we're going to kick off in March,
April.
I think so.
April.
Maybe
April?
March.
Okay.
There are no rules. We can do it whenever
No
we
rules.
want to.
We can do whatever
We
we
get
can do whatever we
That's
want.
the first quarter of the year to kind of have fun and just
Yeah.
explore random shows. But we're
We
ready
got,
to get
we got
back to work.
Mexico, and then we'll
yeah.
figure it out. But this is gonna be a great series. It's gonna involve and require audience participation.
Yep.
We're gonna need
gonna need
people's
you.
help. Which I guess we'll talk about when we're ready. We're gonna just keep it secret.
We got to keep it for a little bit longer, right?
We have the series. We know what we're
Mhm.
going to do. It is the only thing I would give away is that it is not going to be limited to 2025.
Mhm. Yeah.
I think that the structure of this series allows us to explore a lot, and with a little bit less like we have to do these 5 tours in the next 5 episodes, or else we don't make our self-imposed deadline.
Less
This
mania.
will- so like we'll have certain episodes like this where like, hey, we just want to talk about this show because it's having an anniversary, or this run's having an anniversary. We want to have this guest on, but we have this series that we will be returning to with some significant regularity, plus a couple special episodes, plus some drafts for Megan to win. Lots of good stuff in 2025.
We don't want to go too long without Megan winning another draft, so we gotta.
Well, God knows I can't win the 2.0 draft that's coming up. Brian would have a fucking heart attack if I won that
Oh, that would be
draft.
great. I'm gonna set it up. I'm actually gonna throw the draft so Megan wins just to see what happens.
You can't win the two. You've won every draft that you've.
I've only won
participated in.
2, which is the same number as RJ. So let's just be clear.
We are going to be back next week with another show that I think Megan or I am going to choose. I mean, we're kind of choosing them as a group, but we'll narrow it down and choose something for next week. I think doing these are fun because we're not just talking about this show. We're talking about a lot of other stuff, including sports and history and context and metaphysical experiences and a lot more. It's pretty fun.
So
Brian, Megan, Brian, any last words?
Go back and listen to 2015 Fish. Just take a gander. There's some great stuff in there. It's 10 years old. Really fun vibes. Good fish. Do it.
Take a
And
gander.
read these
gander.
truths. Read these truths by Jill Lepore. Okay, just do it.
Read
I've
these
already been
truths.
assigned that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And join us on Monday for Library Card.
Yeah, that's gonna be fun. Northwoods. Northwoods is a awesome book. Top book of the year for all of us, I think, of 2024. It's gonna be fun to talk about. I'm excited. All right. We'll see you all next week. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
See you guys.